So I'm curious, do we have sound now? Because I just saw where we may have lost sound. You know, things happen. We pick up the pieces. We're talking about the Giants. Let's just keep it rolling. Are you ready? And I've turned the chat room on using my phone now instead of my iPad. I'm not sure what happened. We've got some storms going on where I live. And I'm just curious if maybe the storms have just taken over. We've had a rain delay. Let's just call it that. How about that? Here we go. Talking about the Giants. Are they sellers? Are they buyers? Do they believe they are sellers? Or do they even know yet what they're going to do? It's an interesting problem to have. But for fantasy purposes, you're talking about making trades and trying to get a Bumgarner. You know, first of all, Bumgarner, does he not pitch in the best pitcher's park in Major League Baseball? Yes. Okay? And if we look at his statistics, they do not blow you away, do they? No, they don't. And so if we put him on another team, do we think that, give me a sound check, Chappie, do we think that his numbers will improve, or does it depend where they trade him, or now do they even trade him at all? It's kind of like a bad dream, right? And so how can we pick or predict what to do with Bumgarner going forward? Now, they've had other players. I told you about Brandon Crawford yesterday. What a game. 3 home runs in one day, 8 RBIs. Brandon Belt, thank you, Chappie. Since he's been leading off, if you looked at Brandon Belt's numbers, he's hitting like 378 over the last 12 games in the leadoff spot. They have found a non-stereotypical leadoff hitter. They're scoring runs. They're winning games. They've got a closer. The Giants, to me, are just major players now. And if you look at that National League, I didn't even finish. The Pirates, 3.5 games out of the wild card. The Reds, 3.5 games out of the wild card. Do the Mets, are they amazing? I don't think so. They're 5.5 out of the wild card, though. They've won 2 in a row. The only team in the National League that is not relevant playoff speaking right now, they would have to be the Miami Marlins. July 16, Tuesday at 6:15 p.m., the Marlins are the only National League team not in the playoff race mathematically. And if you exclude the Mets, then out of the 15 teams, 13 are within 3.5 games of a playoff spot. So don't go, what's the old saying? Counting your chickens before they hatch. Don't go counting the Giants out yet. Bochy knows how to win. It's his last year. He would love to go out a winner. I didn't even give them airtime in the standings up until today. But now I feel I need to, because they've changed my mind. You know, as much as I was a Nationals believer, and still am, I was a Nationals believer when a lot of you guys listening were not. I didn't even consider the Giants. But now we have to. They're fantasy relevant. They're reality relevant. They're going to be players, and I just think they're going to keep players instead of selling them off. Let's take a look at the American League. And, of course, I love to talk about the New York Yankees. You know that. I know that. And here we go. As we look at the East, the Yankees, they lead the division, the American League, and lead it quite well. 59-33. They have a 6-game lead over the Tampa Bay Rays. They lost to Tampa last night. Boston's in third. I want to spend more time. We talked about the divisions. We know the Twins lead the Central. We know the Houston Astros lead the West. We know the leads there are sizable. We know the Yankees have a 117-run differential. The Twins 121 and Houston 91. Let's look at I want to spend more time focusing on the wild card standings, because I think right now, I'm not conceding the division, but I will say the teams that played 90 to 92 games, there are only 70 games left. And divisions, where you have more than 5 or 6 game leads, which you do in the American League, it would take a not only hot streak by, say, a Cleveland, but a cold streak by the Twins. It can happen. I'm not awarding division titles today, but I do think the Yankees, Twins, and Astros have an upper leg on making the playoffs. Okay, so with that in mind, let's talk about the wild card. Right now, the Tampa Bay Rays playing the Yankees tonight. Beat them last night 5-4. What about Travis d'Arnaud last night? Are you guys Travis d'Arnaud believers? Or are you thinking there's no way he can continue to do what he's doing? We're going to talk about his stats in a moment over the last week. But for those of you who have been in a cave or under a rock or just don't pay attention to anything related to baseball, yet you claim to be a fantasy player, d'Arnaud hit 3 home runs off of the Yankees last night. 3! Boom, boom, boom. He's starting tonight at first base. He's leading off. He's basically taking over that starting role from Zunino. Pause for a moment. Chappie, you're on at 7. I'm ready for 9 o'clock tonight with you, Chappie. Are you ready for me? That's the question. I'm checking up to see if you're actually in the chat room, and I'm going to look and see what the answer is, because I just got to believe after about a month of no Arnie and Chappie, studios and audiences across the United States of America, Puerto Rico, and other places abroad are dying to hear from the chat man and Arnie tonight. Yes, he's in. You like that intro, don't you, Chappie? I'm always coming up with something, it's not scripted, it's not staged, and that's me and Chappie. It's not scripted, it's not staged, and it's quality fantasy chat. In fact, if you don't believe me, there's only one way to prove me wrong, and that is listen to Chappie and me tonight at 9, listen to Chappie tonight at 7, but before that, we got a lot to go through here. Wild card, National League. Talking about, American League. Get it right. Tampa leads the wild card by 2 games. Cleveland and Oakland are tied for the second wild card. Both are 12 games above 500. Both have won 8 of 10. Cleveland 2 in a row. They beat Detroit last night 8-6. Oakland beat the White Sox 3-2. They've won 4 in a row. The run differentials, Tampa has the third best in the American League at 103. Oakland has the 5th best at 83. Cleveland only at 24. We know the Tribe hasn't been scoring a lot of runs this year, but we know they can pitch the heck out of the baseball. Boston sits 2 games out of the final wild card. The Red Sox, they beat Toronto last night. Playing Toronto again tonight. They have won 7 out of 10, even though they lost 2 out of 3 over the weekend to the Boys in Blue from Los Angeles. Texas, 3 games out of the wild card. The Angels. I want to talk about the Angels, but my buddy told me he was loving the Angels going forward. I tell you what I'll do, Chappie. I'll make a deal with you. If you'll hold off on Angel Talk at 7, I'll hold off on Angel Talk at 6. Can I get a commitment out of you in the chat room? Because if not, I'm getting ready to pour Angels all over the place. And I'd rather save that for you and me because I got a lot of material on that. And guess what? I know you do too. So I'm waiting for a response. If I don't get it, I'm going back to the Angels in just a moment, and I'm pouring it on. I'm going to talk about a closer. I'm going to talk about some starters. I'm going to talk about a lineup, but I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait to see what Chappie says. If he agrees. So 9 o'clock, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about the LA Angels of Anaheim. They are only 4.5 out of the wild card. 4 in a row they've won. Beat Houston last night 9-6. And that's all I'll say for now about the Angels. The White Sox, here it drops off precipitously. The White Sox are the only other team in the American League I haven't mentioned who are within 9 games of a wild card spot. They are 9 games out. Everybody else is 15.5 or more. So I'm not counting on Seattle, Toronto, Kansas City, Detroit, or Baltimore. And for fantasy purposes, 2 schools of thought. Okay? I typically like teams that are in the playoff hunt, to have players on my fantasy teams that are in the playoff hunt. I'll tell you about a trade I was offered. You guys can fill me in. I've shared it with a few. I was offered a trade last night. I would trade away Fernando Tatis Jr., who's raking. He's the best shortstop in Major League Baseball right now, across almost all categories. Give me some Fernando Tatis Jr. I was offered to trade away Fernando Tatis Jr., and I would in turn receive Walker Buehler. Not a bad trade. I guess you'd say a fair trade, but here's my concern with that. I want teams with players like Oakland, Boston, Cleveland, in the National League. Give me some fantasy players on Washington, St. Louis, Milwaukee, Arizona, even San Diego, 2.5 games out of the wild card. Why? Because these players are going to play every day, or maybe an occasional rest. But the Dodgers, 30 games above 500, don't you just see them giving Walker Buehler, let's skip a start, let's limit his pitches. Limiting pitches means limiting innings. Limiting innings means limiting opportunity in fantasy. I think Walker Buehler is a great pitcher. And if the Dodgers were in a dogfight, I'd probably take the trade. But then I wonder, if the Dodgers were in a dogfight, would I have ever been offered it? Pitching this year is so scarce. And Scherzer's back. Scherzer's really the only starter in the major leagues that I feel confident in every time in, every time out. That's true. Now, if you look at Clayton Kershaw, his numbers have been pretty impressive. They really have. And, draft-wise, remember the beginning of the year, guys, when we were drafting? And Kershaw, we didn't draft him high because of the injury bug and all the discussion. Royals 29 Boom says, yes, that was concerned with Buehler. And Buehler pitched deep into the postseason last year. Deep. The Dodgers played 7 games in the World Series. So he went as far. They played as far into the postseason as you could possibly play. And you've got to recall, Buehler was the man. He was the ace for the Dodgers last year. And it wasn't Ferris' day off. Walker never had a day off. It was never Buehler's day off. He was pitching as much as he could. The Dodgers were shooting the bullets out of that arm, and they are going to rest him in the second half. So as you're looking at fantasy trades, I'm not sure when your trade deadlines are coming up, but they're coming up soon. We know the reality deadline is 15 days away. Hopefully your fantasy trade deadlines are after that, so you can take a look at where players are and where they're moving. But I'm concerned about trading for players like a Buehler. I'm concerned about trading for a Verlander. The last week of the season, and you see X's beside Los Angeles. You see X's beside Houston, meaning clinched division or best record clinched or whatever they're playing for. I don't think they play for best record so much anymore. But if they get that X beside their name, you can just see these aces getting some time off. And leading up to it, the Dodgers have the West. It's over. The Western Division of the National League is over. Why would they push that button? They're not going to. So I declined the trade. Who would I take? Have you heard the rumor today about DeGrom possibly going to the Yankees? And the Yankees have clearly said no prospect is off the table. Chappie, you're right. Domingo Germán for the Yankees got rest. He's come out pitching like he was pitching early in the year. They put him on the IL. Sit him down. Teams are going to do that with these young arms. They're not going to risk a career for this year. Not with the young arms. And you can see the signs of it long term when you look at a Clayton Kershaw. The Dodgers wore him out. The miracle of miracles is Verlander. And of course, recently, Verlander has not been pitching